Okay, so let's talk about a social behavior that gets a ton of things wrong about it, both by the people who do it and by the people who are on the receiving end. If you've ever felt completely wiped out by socializing and then got called antisocial just because you needed some space, well, you're going to want to stick around for this.
Let's just start right here. Have you ever felt this? You're hanging out with people you genuinely like, but when it's over, you don't feel great. You just feel completely drained. People call it a social hangover, and believe me, it is a very, very real thing.
And this is where things get really interesting. Look at the disconnect here. On one side, you've got what other people might call it. You're being antisocial, rude, maybe even hateful. But on the other side, that's what's actually going on inside. It's social burnout, you're emotionally drained, and honestly, you're just trying to be protective.
So let's tackle this thing head on. We're going to start with this whole social burnout misconception and really dig into why that need to just be alone for a bit gets so misunderstood.
You know, let's get one thing perfectly straight. Needing to pull back and recharge that social battery, that does not make you antisocial. It makes you human. It's actually a sign that you know your own limits, not that you dislike the people you were just with. So, if it's not you being antisocial, why does everyone seem to think it is? Well, that brings us to how it all looks from the outside, what other people see when you start to pull away. And here it is. This is the absolute core of the misunderstanding. When you create that distance, you get quiet, you start turning down invites, you just seem less there. It's so easy for other people to take it personally. From their perspective, it can feel like a slap in the face, like you're being cruel, or that you just flat out don't like them anymore.
But what if it's not about hate at all? What if the real reason is something way more complicated than that? It turns out it all comes down to how disappointment can, over time, build distance.
And here we have it. This is the key idea for this whole explainer. It's called disappointment building distance. And notice that phrase, a protective mechanism. This isn't an attack. It's an act of self-preservation. It's what happens when you've been repeatedly let down or had your boundaries crossed over and over again.
I love this quote because it just says it all, doesn't it? Think of that space you create as a shield. You're raising it to protect your own inner peace. It was never meant to be a sword to hurt anyone else.
Okay, so how does this whole self-preservation thing actually work in practice? Let's get into the mechanics of what it takes to protect that internal state of calm.
When you boil it all down, this is what it's about. We all have this kind of internal baseline, right? A place where we feel calm and centered, and when certain people or situations are constantly throwing that off, the most natural response in the world is to create some distance to get back to neutral.
This breaks down that journey perfectly. It doesn't just happen overnight. First, a boundary gets violated, and usually not just once, but again and again. Then, that slow, creeping disappointment sets in as your trust just kind of erodes. And finally, creating distance becomes the only option left. It's a totally logical progression when you think about it. So the biggest takeaway here is this huge opportunity to reframe how you think about your social needs. It's not about being hateful at all. It's about being selective. And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? We're trading in those old, heavy labels like hateful, antisocial, judgmental for a new understanding that actually fits. You're not hateful, you're being protective. You're not antisocial, you're being socially selective. And you're not judgmental, you're just trying to preserve your own peace. Seriously, if you remember one thing from all this, please let it be this. Your need for distance, your social selectivity, it's an act of self-preservation. It's not the same thing as passing a negative judgment on somebody else. So, I'll leave you with this question. Now that you have this idea of disappointment building distance, who in your life might you see a little differently? Could it be a friend, a family member, or maybe it's yourself?